What is a true fact so baffling, it should be false? People were deliberately infected with malaria to cure their syphilis, and the man who developed this treatment, Julius Wagner-Jauregg, received the Nobel Prize for it. The extremely high fevers of the malaria infections killed the syphilis bacteria, then the patients were cured of the malaria using quinine. If sound could travel through space, the roar of the sun would be deafening even though it's 93 miles away. Because space is a vacuum. Sound can't travel though a vacuum. That shit makes sound? Yup. The sun is 290 decibels. If space could carry sound, it would still be 125 dB by the time it got to Earth. It'd be like a jackhammer everywhere all the time. Of course, if that happened, we'd probably evolve to be deaf in that audio spectrum so we wouldn't notice. At 1,234.8 kilometers per hour, it would take sound around 13.85 years to reach Earth. Wow, so the sun could die. 8 minutes after we'd be in total darkness, but the roar of the sun would still be everywhere for 13 years. Imagine just sitting on a world of endless night listening to the roar of a sun long dead. From 1613 and 1620, a samurai traveled to Rome by way of Mexico. During this time, Shakespeare was still alive, Virginia had been founded for around a decade, Galileo was accused of heresy, and Pocahontas arrived in England. He met the Pope, he was made a Roman citizen. His name was Hasekura Tsunenaga, and was the last Japanese person to officially visit Europe until around 1860. The longest time between two twins being born is 87 days. Kilkenny, Ireland, gave birth to twins Amy and Kate Marie, Katie, Elliot 87 days apart, making them the twins with the longest interval between their births. The twins were born at Waterford Regional Hospital. Amy was born prematurely on June 1, 2012, and Kate followed on August 27. Guinness World Records. Seems like that would be a shitload of stress for the unborn twin in the womb. There is an extremely rare condition called Stone Man Syndrome. It causes any smallest damage done to tissue to regrow into a bone. Speaking briefly, people affected by this sickness slowly turn into living statues as they get older. Wikipedia. Surgical removal of the extra bone growths has been shown to cause the body to repair the affected area with even more bone. I'll never sleep again. Adult patients eventually have to decide on what position they wish to predominantly take for the rest of their lives. This was creepier for me. I saw a documentary on that once. One advanced sufferer had to explain to a young girl with the syndrome that at some point she was going to have to make a choice: be frozen forever standing up or be frozen forever sitting down, and the pros and cons of both. Utterly chilling. I found an article about one man who said he chose the standing position and is happy with that choice. He has a wheelchair he can stand, and that also lays him into bed. More people died making the V-2 rockets during WW2 than were killed by them. Another fun fact about V-2 rockets. Germany was facing a large issue with rocket fuel shortages during the project because people kept drinking it. The fuel was made from 70% ethyl alcohol and 30% water, distilled from potatoes. It was the most economically viable fuel at the time, since they were already very low on other fuels. To stop workers from drinking it, they denatured the alcohol, essentially poisoning it, but people kept drinking it anyways and getting extremely ill. This simply caused people to start leaving the V2 program, suggesting that they were only in it for the free alcohol. This also means that any alcohol over 70% ABV is stronger than actual WW2 rocket fuel. The life of Frane Selak, the luckiest unlucky man in the world. January 1962. Frane is riding on a train through a freezing canyon when it fell into an icy river. All 17 other passengers died while he escapes with a broken arm and hypothermia. 1963. On his first plane trip, he was sucked out of the plane's door and landed in a haystack, unscathed. 19 other people were killed in the crash. 1966. He was riding in a bus when it skidded off the road into yet another icy river. 4 passengers drowned while he only received some minor cuts and bruises. 1970. His car's engine burst into flames while he was driving, but he managed to escape before it exploded. 1973. In yet another driving incident, his car's engine was doused with hot oil from a broken fuel pump. This caused flames to shoot through the air vents, singing off all of his hair. He was otherwise unharmed. 1995 he was hit by a bus but only sustained minor injuries. 1996 to escape a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on a mountain curve, he swerved into a guardrail that broke on impact. To save himself, he jumped out of his car's open door and grabbed onto a tree branch as he watched his car plummet off the cliff. Suffice to say the guy had a complicated relationship with the Grim Reaper. He also won the lottery, I think. Yup. In 2003, he won $1.1 million in US dollars. In 2010 he gave the rest of his money to friends and family, as he wanted to live a more frugal life. If every single person on the entire planet took part in a rock-paper-scissors contest, where everyone paired up and played, losers were knocked out and winners stayed on, etc., you would only have to win 33 times in a row to beat all 7.53 billion people on the planet. When Mt. Everest was first measured, it was exactly 29,000 feet. It was reported as 29,002 because exactly 29,000 was not believable. I'm picturing someone standing at the bottom with a tape measure and someone running all the way up with the other end. When a woman with breast implants is cremated, the implants will melt into goo. It drips to the bottom of the furnace and needs to be cleaned up once cooled. Kim Kardashian gonna just straight up melt into a puddle. She's had so much plastic surgery they're gonna have to recycle her. Nintendo was founded in 1889. Before video games, Nintendo ran sex hotels in Japan. If you're launching from Earth, the most difficult place to reach in the solar system is the Sun. The reason for this is that to fly directly into the Sun you need to first launch from Earth, and then remove all of your orbital velocity around the Sun. Anything less will just put you into a different orbit around the Sun rather than directly into it. The amount of power required for that to do it directly is basically impossible currently. As an alternative you could, for relatively little power, fly all the way out to Pluto distance, slow down much less, and then fall back into the Sun. The trade-off being the travel time is now about 90 years. There are other in-between paths that could get you there for different balances of energy and time, but all of them are tougher than getting basically anywhere else in the solar system with an equivalent balance. There's a mission currently traveling to study the Sun, the Parker Solar Probe. It won't be flying directly in, but plans to make the closest passes than any probe ever has. It's going to make 7 passes by Venus to shed speed so it can get closer and closer to the Sun. The full flight time is planned as just less than 7 years. As of this post, they are 1 week shy of a year in. President John Tyler, born in 1790, has 2 living grandsons. It's pretty well known by now, but calculators today have more computing power than Apollo 11. We got to the moon with slide rulers and huge balls. Switzerland has accidentally invaded Liechtenstein thrice in the last 50 years. On the first time in 1976, Swiss military got lost and ended up in Liechtenstein, so the Liechtensteiners offered them drinks like proper hosts. On the second time in 1992, Swiss military forgot that a certain observation post was actually not in Swiss territory but in Liechtenstein territory, so they just said sorry and forgot about it. Then again in 2007, the Swiss army got lost and entered Liechtenstein, but eventually realized they weren't in Switzerland anymore, Toto, so they turned back. Liechtenstein didn't even know this happened till the Swiss apologized, again, to which they basically said, "No problem, bro." A morbidly obese person can survive with absolute starvation without any sickness or feeling ill, under close control. There have been studies since 60s. There is a patient in 1973 who went under a 382-day starvation diet for therapeutic purposes under close control with only vitamin and mineral supplements and water intake without protein, carbohydrate or fat intake, no food at all. Dropped from 207 kilograms to 88 kilograms and maintained it. After a follow-up checkup 5 years later, the patient was 96 kilograms, stabilized. Prolonged fasting had no ill effects. Keep in mind, for anyone tempted to imitate, multiple others attempted this after him and wound up dead. Do not try this at home. Horses can vomit. Rats are also unable to vomit. This incidentally is why rat poison works. They have no way to rid their bodies of it before enough builds up to kill them. There is no good metric for the number of languages on Earth. This is mostly because linguists cannot agree on what constitutes a new language, and what constitutes a dialect of an existing language. The best current metric of how many languages exist is the number of translations of the Christian Bible. Even if 99% of Earth's population thought you were unattractive, 76 million people would still find you attractive. Too bad those 76 million people never see me. Only 4 people have been to the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the ocean. One of those people is James Cameron, the director of Titanic. If you shrink down our sun to the size of a white blood cell, the Milky Way galaxy would be equal to the size of the continental United States. Space is huge. Sense of smell is molecular, meaning that molecules of what you are smelling are actually inside of your body as a result of smelling them. Think about that the next time you enter a public restroom. Trees evolved before the bugs responsible for rotting, i.e. bacteria which could eat lignin and cellulose, did. Thus when they died, they just fell over in place, and lay there instead of rotting. Over time the weight of the upper layers of tree corpses compacted the lower levels, which eventually became the coal we dig up and use today. There used to be a radioactive energy drink called Radithor that was in the US market for a decade from 1918 to 1928. Some of the more prominent users had to be buried in lead coffins. Giant squids have a donut-shaped brain so their esophagus can run through the middle. If they try to swallow too large a bite of food they can get brain damage. What is a true fact so baffling it should be false? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.